Alright, welcome back people, welcome back. Glad to be with all of you once again in another Tuesday, 1st of July 2025 in this case. 1st of July, indeed. We made it through half of the year, officially, in that sense. Okay, as you can see, we are in the middle of the winter. Here we are kind of like the coldest spot of the, well, not of the earth, but pretty much one of the coldest countries right now. As you can see, yes, it's the exact opposite as all of you over there in the northern hemisphere. Okay, okay. People, first of all, before we begin, and I won't forget this time. Today I am on time, and I remember to do this. Thanks from the bottom of my heart to isar7 underscore. Here I'll display your amazing follow message there with the great soundtrack of Luigi's Mansion. Amazing game, amazing game. I highly recommend to you all. Um, for being the 44th follower of the Twitch channel. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. From Star Wars: Your Republic, I presume we were doing a raid, and and he asked, and I mentioned, and I had to tank the raid, and the person asked, told me basically that that my that I have held. Had held a pretty good aggro with the boss. I basically tanked the boss, and I told him that the build was like I told you that the build was the one I used for Master Mode, Knights of Fallen Empire, so the person asked me for the bots, basically, so from Star Wars: Your Republic. Okay, people, I cannot believe it! We are so close to finally make it to the first 50 followers required for Twitch to not delete my bots after 7 days, to extend it to 15, fortunately. But yeah, pretty much. So thanks from the bottom of my heart to everyone. Afterwards, that it basically is just a matter of average viewers per stream in that sense. So no no worries at all. I can only thank every and each member of over at of the channel that enjoys looking at my that enjoys watching my reviews. Basically, from the bottom of my heart, I can only say thanks from the bottom of my heart to all of you for being at least for all of the for all of the time you've spent every second watching my crazy analysis. Okay, with all of that said, people, with all of that said, I only took 3 minutes, but still, I know that for YouTube times, with the short attention span that we have nowadays, it's way too much. 3 minutes. So let's get into the topic of analysis for today. Okay, as you can read from the title description, today I wanted to take a look at the stat system of the game. Today I wanted to take a look at that because the stat system, I will do a classification first, and then I will try to classify the specific case of Drakensang Online, as I usually do with all of the Isometric action RPG games. Basically, we'll first do a classification, and then we'll get into the specific details of Drakensang Online, after also classifying it first, correct? So, um, in terms of the story of the game, we are right now, as a bit of a recap, in the pretty much the third town of the game. Pretty much in the third town of the game, we've made it up to here, and no, not this one, the other one, the world map, the here. We are pretty much here at the Resistance command center after fighting an army of undead. Basically, the story of the game is that a lot of basically we made it through Juria here. We started through here, through here, through here. We made it to King's Hill, and from King's Hill, we made it to the northwest. Sorry, to the to the northeast of the map. Sorry, first to the northwest, and then to the northeast of the map because we did some dungeons here, first here, and then over here, and then we went to the second region here. We made it to not to Troll Canyon. We made it to not there, more or less over here. This one to Warian Sanctuary here. Here. It was like this. We started here, then we went all the way over here to King's Hill. This was our journey. Then from here to the northwest, precisely, clear the dungeons. Then to the south, and now we headed in the last stream to the northwest. In terms of the story of the game, basically we met the goddess. We met the goddess last time, the goddess of the world of Aventuria that didn't trust the humans, basically. And we had to kind of like earn her trust by beating the third boss of the game, which was much easier than the second one, that was Callus in that sense. So yes, we are 3 bosses in terms of the game, and that's pretty much the story. So far we've been fighting first the undead, and then uh, a bit more of enemy variety, basically to earn the trust of the goddess to save humanity from this curse that is raising all of the monsters across the land. In terms of the quests that we are doing, we'll begin with this one, which is the main quest, and then I have to clear these 4 from last time. Then we go back to the main quest, as you can see here, and pretty much we just arrived to Teaganswall, the old sanctuary. Well, we are going to arrive. We are at the resistance camp of this, that is, of that fortress that is a bit to the here, to the north, to the northeast of our position, basically. Okay, so let's begin with the main quest. And in terms of the topic of analysis for today, as I've said, I wanted to take a look at the stat system, so we'll spend the next 3 hours and a half, 4 hours together exploring that. Okay. But I wanted to do a recap. Sorry, I just arrived and I couldn't uh, eat anything, so I just had a drink and I was and I will need to drink a bit of water. Don't worry, it was just that it was a drink that made me thirsty a bit. Well, don't worry, people, don't worry. Okay, so let's get to it. Let's get to the stat system. Okay, we have to head over there. Ah, well, there we have an objective, the objective of a side quest. We can begin there. Okay. So last time, with a lot of help from Flying Energies, precisely, I discovered the skill tree. Of Flying Energies and Patrick. 2 viewers of the channel, for those of you watching this over YouTube, so just so you at least have the context. Then also another viewer helped me to farm a bit and get 1 more level. So basically, as you can see now, I've discovered, I've assigned my key bindings, and I'm able to... Hey, that one looks good, but I don't remember assigning this shit here. Okay. Oh, it's this one. Okay, no. We need to wait until level 31, we're at 28, to assign this one, the Frost Nova. Because basically this one, combined with Singularity, will allow us to break armor. Okay, but for now we'll just use the singularity and our improved fireball. As you can see, I've assigned 10 points there, one here, as precisely Flying Energies instructed me, pretty much in terms of the basic skill tree of the game. So, I want you to take a look at the stat system, but we'll do so in a minute, because first I want to clear that quest. And that will give me time to precisely get to a topic I mention constantly when analyzing games, which is none other than the systems. As you can see, their armors are being destroyed like that. Okay, so a topic I always mention and go on and on about. The system of the game, the stat system of the game, of any RPG in general. It can. I know that that the quest guidance is over there. I just want to finish this quest since it's right on. We're basically on top of it on the map. So there can be two stat systems in any RPG game, as I classify them. If you watch the final analysis, the analysis of Hellgate London and others we've done on the channel, basically it's that chest, perfect, brilliant, brilliant. As you can, if you remember the analysis of Hellgate London and other RPGs we've covered on the channel, I classify the stat systems in two, basically. Intrinsic and extrinsic stat systems. Basically, for those who watching this over at YouTube that maybe don't know or are not familiar with the classification of the stat system I do, basically, an intrinsic stat system means that something is internal to another element. Basically, that's the meaning of the word intrinsic. And in the case of the word extrinsic is the opposite, that there's an element that is absolutely, completely external to another one. That is basically external to the existence of another element, regardless of what it is. It's a general term. Okay, but applied to video games precisely, and all of this, and the stat system of an RPG precisely, it will be dependent on. Hey, the animation didn't work there. I hope it's not broken like Ambra told me on Thursday when I was playing Star Wars: The Republic. That told me you are so fortunate to not be playing Drakensangonline right now because it's absolutely broken. Because it's absolutely broken in the animations and everything. No, but it should work at least, no? Right. Because there the animation fell for a sec. Okay, so we have intrinsic and extrinsic stat systems. What's the case of an intrinsic stat system? Let's begin kind of like with the concept in abstract. Well, it means, in the case of a stat system, that the base attack damage of a character, which will pretty much be the stat that determines the efficiency in combat in the biggest proportion possible. Basically, I know that we could think about other stats like movement speed or mana regeneration or health points or block value or whatever, but the stat that will determine as a damage per second class if you succeed in most RPG games, on average, the most common case, think about Diablo, Titan Quest, any isometric action RPG you could possibly think about, and you will see that you will be dependent, you will have to rely on the base attack value to survive, not your health. You can get away with having low health points if your attacks are strong enough, in that sense. That will lead me to another topic that I always mention, which is the the precisely that I always take care of it, which is um, the paradigm of min maxing that I always mention. That in some games they exaggerate increasing the base attack damage so much that uh, makes the rest of the rest of the stat system as a whole useless, which is also another mistake. For example, the problem of min maxing that I always mention. For example, in Diablo 3, you can notice that that precisely once the proud fortress of the Dragon Knights, now it has been ravaged by war. So, hey, we didn't do this map, right? No, we didn't do this map. Fortress Teaganswall. So, basically, basically, the base attack damage is the most prominent, the most important, the stat that will have the highest degree of influence on the survival of your character, basically. Right? It will have the highest impact on that. So because of that, is the measure that I use for this classification system. Thank you. I don't want to listen to myself. I knew I had forgotten about something. It will be the stat that I use constantly when I analyze RPGs as the measure to determine if the stat system of a game is intrinsic or extrinsic in that sense. And you must be thinking, well, what's the importance of that eraser? All of this is quite abstract, as you usually, as we are used to with you, with all of your stupid abstract stuff, basically. But it's important. So, remember, base attack damage. I want you to remember that. Okay? I need you to remember that stat. Because that one, as I've said, it has the highest degree of influence, the base attack damage, on the survival of your character. It will have the biggest impact. Because of that, I use it as a measure to determine the system. Okay, so, in the case of an intrinsic system, in the framework of the stat system, precisely, the base attack damage, how is it determined in an intrinsic system? Remember that at the beginning, 14 minutes ago, I said that intrinsic means that an element is internal to the system in that case. Okay, so if it's an intrinsic element that is internal to the system, to the stat system of the game, in this case, because we're analyzing a video game, it means that the base attack damage, as I've said, that is the one stat that will have the highest degree of impact and influence, it means that it's determined internally in your character. Okay, but what does that mean? It's still way too abstract and stupid for anyone watching this as a YouTube bot, you are used to if you watch the bots over at YouTube, people, because I have had some people tell me that that is quite abstract. It means that the base attack damage that will, at the end of the day, determine your efficiency in combat and will determine your survival in 99% of isometric action RPG games, rather than your health or your attack speed and everything. Your base attack damage is determined by elements that are internal to that character. In other words, one of the three primary stats, the three classic primary stats that the isometric action RPG genre has historically used for it. The base attack damage needs to be affected by an internal element to be like this. In more layman terms, more simple terms, so it's not that abstract for anyone watching as a YouTube bot, basically, if you remember, if you play the isometric action RPG games, you know there's a classic inherited naming convention for the three primary stats of characters. Basically, strength for the warrior, intelligence for the mage, and dexterity for the rogue or cunning or whatever. But generally, those are the classic naming conventions. Those three. Okay. So, we have isometric action RPG games, commonly known as Diablo clones. I just don't call them that. To be more descriptive, I've mentioned this in the previous stream and in the genre classification, to be more descriptive of the genre we are analyzing. But basically, when the strength for the warrior, when the intelligence for the mage, and when the dexterity for the rogue increase the base attack damage of the character, then we are in presence of an intrinsic stat system, correct? And so you level up, you get some attribute points, and you spend them on either of the three, on any of the three primary stats, and that then increases your base attack damage. That will be the main stat that will allow you to survive, basically, as I explained at the beginning. Okay. What's the case of an extrinsic system? An extrinsic system in which the base attack damage of the character is the character is determined by an element that is external to this stat system that I'm describing. This must have been loot from when District helped me last time, because it says item level 78. Okay. Let me destroy some gear like this. The daily logging thing is okay. Time to switch our stuff. There. We remove this one. We open this. Okay. New title unlocked. The Adventure. Okay. Gold ring like that. 70 health points. Well, this one is much better than this. Now we just destroy. No. There. Okay. The quest items. But I had no, I still haven't unlocked the second one. Yeah, I need to remember the item that Ambra told me at the end of the other stream. Weapon speed, damage. Let's use damage like that. We apply that. Oh, I have a lot of quest items. They should have a differentiated overflow bag. They should have a different inventory for quest items. Generally, that's a solution that a lot of games have. Alright, they are mostly quest items anyways. Okay. Fire resistance. No, there we go. That should do it because otherwise I cannot loot the quest item. There we go. Give me that. Perfect. Okay. Sorry for that delay, people. As I was mentioning, what's the case of an extrinsic system then in the framework of this genre classification? Well, basically, an extrinsic system is one in which the base attack damage is. Bring the list to Alexander Campbell in the Resistance Command Center. Okay, let's go. I know, but that means just going back. We can just teleport there. There we go. What's an extrinsic system? One in which the base attack damage is then determined by external factors, external elements to the character. Remember that in the intrinsic system, I mentioned that pretty much strength, intelligence, or dexterity, the classic three inherited naming conventions from Dungeons and Dragons, determine the base attack damage depending on class. For the warrior will be the strength, for the mage will be the intelligence, and for the rogue will be dexterity. Okay. So that's in an intrinsic system. In an extrinsic system, all of this is determined by external elements to the character, namely the loot. The loot determines pretty much everything. A perfect example of an extrinsic system is Borderlands. It's Borderlands 1, 2, or 3, or 4, or whatever. Borderlands is a perfect example of an extrinsic system. Monster Hunter, an old Japanese derived monster hunting genre games, for example, in which there's no skill tree. Everything depends on loot in those games. So pretty much you can see there the clear difference between an extrinsic stat system and an intrinsic stat system. In one, the base attack damage that as I've said will be the most important stat that will determine the survival of your character. In an extrinsic system is completely dependent on loot. Monster Hunter, think about Monster Hunter, Borderlands, for example. In those games, you cannot increase the base attack damage of your character by spending attribute points, which is more of a classic Dungeons and Dragons inherited stat system, which is the intrinsic system, in which, as I've said, you spend points on strength, on intelligence or dexterity to increase the internal stats of your character. That's why an intrinsic system, it's internal to the character. In an extrinsic system, the source of those of increasing your base attack damage is determined by loot. Of course, there are systems that combine elements from both of them, but there's always a proportion, just like in the genre classification. Okay, let's continue with the main quest, people, and now we'll get into the more mixed cases, as I've said. Teagan's legacy, excellent. Much is written here about Teagan. As Agathon's comrade-in-arms, he vowed to Agathon that he would remain here forever, on guard with his sword ready to be called to action. The sword is also mentioned in the text. Okay, looks like we are progressing through Teagan's fortress at last, people. Teagan's legacy. Teagan's weapons were forged. Remember, Teagan is the god, apparently, of the protector of this region of the world. well, I think it's still the world of Aventuria technically from Drakensang 1. Teagan's weapons were forged with magic and blessed by Agathon. One seems to be missing, however. The Master Builder's text states that Teagan's spear is hidden behind a mechanism within the altar of the temple. Bring it to me. Okay, so um, let's continue with the main quest, shall we, people? That okay? We continue with the main quest, and then we do the rest of the side quests that we have there pending um, to boost our level, pretty much. Okay, so today I wanted to start with that little classification that I always do when analyzing RPG games. You can watch the final analysis of precisely Sacred 2, in which I put a lot of emphasis on the intrinsic and extrinsic stat systems of the game, and also Hellgate London. So why is it that I pay so much attention to that in terms of the stat system? Why is it that the source of the increase of the base attack damage is important? Well, because first it will influence the structure of the level design. First of all, that's the first talking point I wanted to highlight a bit today, and we will dwell into it right now. The source of the stat system in our little classification we did between intrinsic and extrinsic stat systems determines the level, influences the level design of an isometric action RPG. Think about Titan Quest, think about Diablo, think about any isometric action RPG you played, and you will see that the source of the potential increase of the base attack damage will determine the level design. I know all of this sounds extremely abstract for anyone watching this as a YouTube VOD, but you will see how it's quite real. Think about Borderlands for a second. Think about Borderlands, please, for a second, for those of you, or Hellgate London in that sense. Because Hellgate London is the predecessor of Borderlands, technically. Think about Destiny, any looter shooter as they are called nowadays. Think about them. Or Monster Hunter, the ones that I cited some minutes ago as the extrinsic systems. Systems in which the source of increasing your base attack damage, that is the stat that will determine your survival at the end of the day in most isometric action RPG games, or looter slasher RPG games, etc. In that sense... Oh, that one is pretty tough. Give me a sec, people, they're about to kill me. Think about Borderlands and Monster Hunter in that sense. Think about those, please. Think about the level design in those games. Can you finish those games without farming? No. See how it had a relationship with the level design, the type of a stat system that the game had. In that sense, to finish Borderlands, to beat Cromarax the Invincible, which is the secret final boss, or to beat Westminster Catacombs or whatever in Hellgate London, the highest difficulties, the most difficult bosses of those games, or Monster Hunter, can you do it without farming loot? No, it's basically impossible. It's basically impossible. Now, on the opposite side of the spectrum, the intrinsic system, that Borderlands and Monster Hunter are the best, most visible examples of extrinsic systems in which the base attack damage is increased through the gear, through the loot. It's external to the character, the element responsible for increasing the base attack damage of your character in that sense. Okay, that's why I always do this stat system classification, because the source of the... I know it's a quite abstract topic that no one pays attention to, but it does influence the level design of the game. That's the key. Think about Borderlands or Monster Hunter or any monster hunting game, for example. In those games, in Borderlands, can you beat it? Can you beat Monster Hunter without getting the loot? No, it's impossible. Same goes for Borderlands. It's impossible. It's absolutely impossible. Why? Because it has an extrinsic stat system. The elements that determine the base attack damage of your character are external to you just leveling up and increasing those 3 stats I mentioned initially in the intrinsic stat system. Don't worry, people, if they are quite abstract topics, I will constantly repeat them throughout this stream because it's a classification I always do that is quite important. Okay, so the influence with the level design. I wanted to mention this as the first talking point. Games that have an extrinsic stat system in which the base attack damage of your character is increased exclusively through loot or predominantly through loot. It does not need to be exclusively, but at least predominantly through loot, like Monster Hunter. In Monster Hunter, you cannot increase your strength, intelligence, or dexterity or anything like that. There are no basic stats. The stats are only increased through loot, for example. Same goes for Borderlands. In those games, the degree of grinding is much higher because the stat system is extrinsic, because the base attack damage is increased predominantly or exclusively through loot, rather than the base stats of the character. So, what's the point here to wrap up the first point, which is the influence on the level design? That extrinsic systems, as I have been mentioning, systems in which the base attack damage of your character is, we have to go back, right? Yeah, we have to go right. We have to go back, right? In which the base attack damage of your character is determined exclusively by loot rather than spending points on strength, intelligence, or dexterity if you're a warrior, mage, or rogue, according to the classic Dungeons and Dragons classification system. Extrinsic systems have a much more grindy level design. Now, let's think about, for example, I'll tell you a personal anecdote to wrap up this first talking point. Quite short. Cromarax the Invincible. I have it recorded over at YouTube. Cromarax the Invincible is basically the most powerful secret boss of Borderlands 1. I had to farm. It's the first raid boss of Borderlands, but I had to farm a specific sniper rifle to beat it. You have it recorded over at YouTube. I do it with 2 sniper rifles that were the ones that were able to do it. But basically, you need a specific weapon to increase your base attack damage in any way. For example, that one had increased accuracy, and because of that you dealt more damage and whatever. But basically, the point is that you depend on loot to increase your base attack damage in an extrinsic system, because it's external to the character, the element that increases that base attack damage. In an intrinsic system, you get attribute points every time you level up, and you get to spend them and build your character with more strength, with more intelligence, or with more dexterity, and that increases the base attack damage, basically. That's the idea. It's internal to the character, the element responsible for increasing the base attack damage. Okay. because of that, I had to farm in Borderlands 1. I wanted to beat Chromarax, I did it, but before I could do it, I had to constantly farm for a specific sniper rifle, for a specific shield, for specific pieces of gear that without them, it was pretty much impossible to beat Chromarax the Invincible. I use that one as a pretty much a classic example. You can Google, you can watch over at the YouTube, over at my YouTube channel. When I killed Chromarax the Invincible, I used some very specific sniper rifles. Without them, it's impossible. That's an extrinsic system. The same goes for Monster Hunter. Without looting better gear constantly, that one is even worse because it's constantly to progress. You simply cannot progress through the game at all. Now, let's think about the opposite side of the spectrum. An intrinsic system. Diablo 2, Titan Quest, any isometric action RPG you could think about. Okay, while it is true that loot does increase your base attack damage, it is absolutely true, it is true, they have a proportion of intrinsic stat systems in that sense. Why? Because in Diablo 2, in Titan Quest, you spend points on attributes that you earn by leveling up rather than getting loot. See that it's internal to the experience of the character. It's internal. It's not an external factor to the character. See how fascinating this topic is. That's why I always analyze it in every isometric action RPG. In Titan Quest, in Diablo, you just get experience and then spend your attribute points. You increase your strength, your intelligence, or your dexterity. That's a classic naming convention of Dungeons and Dragons that is inherited by the genre, by the isometric action RPG genre, by the Diablo clones. And notice that in those, you increase the base attack damage through those stats. If you increase your strength, your barbarian deals more damage, for example, in Diablo 2. That's an intrinsic system. Okay, now we'll get to the second point now, which is the proportion, the degree of proportion between these two opposite poles of the spectrum in that sense. Okay, let's continue. Teagan's legacy. Remember, we are looking for the weapons of the gods to protect mankind here in Drakensang against the threat of the undead demons. We've already done three boss fights in that sense. We've already done 3 boss fights. This one, the next boss that we do is the 4th one. I did a recap at the beginning, people, in case anyone would like it, of the story so far, with the bosses, with everything, and the things we analyzed so far and everything. Ah, you've recovered the spear. You've recovered the spear. Okay. Our luck was good. It seems our foes haven't deciphered the Master Builder's text. Thanks to you, this holy artifact, Teagan's spear, will lend its might to our cause. Teagan's sword is kept near his sarcophagi in Teagan's sanctuary. I fear that the Nefertari cultists have stolen it, but I could be mistaken. Please investigate and reassure me that the sword remains in its place in Teagan's weapon chest. Okay, that's the main quest, right? Give me a sec. Yeah, that's the main quest. We can keep going with the main quest until it's either way too difficult or I just stumble upon the other side quest. Hello, Patrick. Yo, sorry. How are you, bro? How's it going, Patrick? How's it going? Sorry that you visited on Thursday and I was not playing Drakensang online. That maybe other games bore you. It's just that, as I said, I do variety, and well, I do this one on Tuesdays. How are you doing? Hope you had a great weekend. But yeah, pretty much I'm analyzing the stats system today. How's it going, Patrick? Glad to see you once again in that sense. So yeah, I'm analyzing the stat system. I'm analyzing the stat system. Everything with a lot of cold here. I'm not a Patrick. Sorry, Phantom. Sorry, Phantom. True. It was because wrong guy. Sorry. It's just that both of the names had the same color. Both of the names had the same color. Sorry, Phantom. Sorry, Phantom. Yeah, I remember you from that. You did me the raid the other day. Yeah. It's just that they had the same color. How you doing, Phantom? How you doing? Yes, I remember you that you did the raid the other day with flying energies. I think it was at the beginning. Sorry. Yeah, is that then in 4 hours? Then precisely another Patrick visited that day. Oh yeah, Phantom. Yeah. I remember Phantom. Don't worry, I remember you all. It's all good. No, yeah, it's just that the colors. I have a problem. I use only one monitor, and the colors of your names sometimes are the same, and I don't know if you can configure that shit, but basically the when I see the same colors, it's basically, besides a lot of you use DSO on the name, so it takes me some time. That's the thing as well. Phantom, yes, Phantom. The well, here Phantom, as you can see, in case you are wondering, we are in the coldest moment of the year in our case. So enjoy the summer if you are in the northern hemisphere. Enjoy the summer because now we are in the middle of the winter. Roughly, we are at between 0 and 5 degrees Celsius. Hey, thanks for the follow too. Reached 100 today. Congratulations, Phantom. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no problem. It's the least I could do. The least I could do that you raided me the other day and visited me the other day. Uh, Also, sorry that I mentioned it also to Flying Energies that he raided me. That sorry. I would love to be in all of your chats like you do when you visit me and everything. Because of my jobs, I can't. It's also the reason why I only stream 2 days a week. That's why when I stream, I give it my all because I really don't have time to dedicate it to Twitch a lot in that sense. So, yeah, pretty much is the least I could do. I am in Greece, bro. We got 40 Celsius. Oh, that's brutal. That's brutal. That's brutal. Well, I thought so because generally most of my viewers are either from Europe or the United States in that sense. It's a good split 50-50. And then we have a third category, which is the I have Australian and viewers from New Zealand. Those would be in my group because we share the same summer and winter in that sense. But I know most of you is exactly the opposite. So I thought so. Enjoy the summer, enjoy it. But as you can see, we are between 0 and 5. For US viewers, that's roughly 40 Fahrenheit, more or less. 40 Fahrenheit, 46, something like that. It's more or less like that. So, yes, basically, I am chilling in the most absolute cold, and 40 Celsius, he's melting in an oven. Phantom. Well, you can enjoy going out, going to the beach, those things in that sense. I don't like that a lot in that sense, hence why the winter, a lot of people don't like it, but in my case it's not that bad. As long as I don't get a cold, as long as I don't get a cold. 44 followers, bro, growing fast. Remember, like 1 week ago, I was your fourth, or something. No, you were like 38, could it be? I think it was a bit more, 39, 40. Your 40th, I think it was 40th. No, well, but well, no, it wasn't fast for me. Trust me on that. In that sense, it's my fourth year over at Twitch. So I roughly historically then had a kind of like 40. I remember the last four. Well, sorry, guys, no, I have no time to remember. You were either 39, 40th. or a bit behind. Then I can see the list and deduce it from there. But more or less like that. The 40th at least. Yeah, something like that. No, but well, uh, it come. Trust me that fast. It was not because it's my fourth year over at at Twitch. So no, I had a quite slow start, and even though pretty much at one follower per month. The thing is that it has to do with the games you play, in that sense, and also that, well, because of the things I analyze and everything, and variety. And doing variety, I mentioned it the other day to Flying Energies precisely that if you do variety, I said it, I honestly wouldn't care at all if I stayed roughly at these numbers forever, because I know that variety pretty much is like that. Because people generally what they do is they grab one game, they stream only that one game. I talked about this with Flying Energies, and they grow much faster with that game, but then they become like slaves of that game because it's the only one they can play, that people will watch in that sense. And no, I honestly did not want that from the beginning. So no, looking back, I wouldn't uh, do uh, do that. I like doing variety, even if it took me 4 years to meet at least the very few of you that I've met in that sense. Um, the very few 20 or so that are active, because I know that in that case it won't be a situation in which it will depend of me being a slave of a single game. In that sense, that's the key. I don't want to be a slave of a single game. In that sense, and because of the analysis and everything, uh, I what I love the most is that, first of all of my audience is generally extremely mature and polite in that sense. And first of all, then imagine if you play Fortnite 4 years straight, you will probably get more followers than I do. But then the second you change the game, uh, the the audience, the people will pretty much say, well, this is not what I came for. I don't care about your stupid review at all. So you are boring me. I'll go watch another Fortnite streamer, and the people will pretty much spend their whole Twitch life in a cycle of watching Fortnite, basically, or something like that. I said Fortnite because it's the most popular, or was for a sec, for some years, actually. So yeah, that's the key, Phantom. That's the key, Phantom. In my case, I'd rather put that focus on the analysis, to avoid those things. In that sense, it's slower, as I mentioned to you, and but it has that advantage. It has that great advantage. It has that great advantage that at least you are not a slave of one game. You are not a slave of one game. You are not a slave of one game. That's the key. That damn, why you do my Fortnite streamers like that? No, I cited that already. Yeah, lol. No, I mentioned that one because it's the most popular, and I know that they that is generally the game that causes that case most of the time. Like they can spend kind of like 1,000,000 hours with that one, and at the end of the day, I also think it causes a damage to the viewers. In that sense, why? Because I then the viewers also think it's the only game in existence, and they are not expanding their horizon. I barely know too. Yeah, I know. I thought it was a joke. Oh, this is Grimac, the name of the other server. Look at that. it was a ghost. Let me take out this one. No, in that sense. Sorry, let me take off the sweater. In that sense. The thing is that I think at the end of the day, they cause a damage because they don't expand the horizon of the horizon of probabilities of games to the viewers, and it's something that happened to me with precisely with Star Wars: New Republic. I played that game so much that that indeed Remag, boo, right? Well, I don't know. I'm new to the game. I was Grimac. This is the name of the other server, though. I could see that in the launcher. Voice of the First Circle. But I now am deceased. If only I could remember more. Should my eternal soul not know what happened to me, please help me to recover. That too is nothing. Help me recover my memory. Okay, we have to help him recover his memory. So this is the guy from the launcher that has the other server. He must have done something important to to have a server with his name. There is beef with Grimag and Heredur server. Yeah, I'm playing in Heredur because District told me to do so, that it was the most populated. But yeah, in that sense, I was mentioning the stat system today of the game that I wanted to analyze, just so you have a little bit of a recap if you arrived a bit later. Basically I classify stat systems in both intrinsic and extrinsic, depending on a very interesting fact, which is if the this is the quest item, right? We need to collect some quest items there. We have a map. Okay. Yeah, that one is probably the side quest to recover his memory. I classify stat systems in two categories, basically. I did at the beginning of the stream, pretty much, but just to have a bit of a summary, intrinsic and extrinsic, depending if the element, whichever it may be, that determines the base stat, the base damage, that increases the base damage stat of the character, is external or internal to the character itself. If it's external, extrinsic. If it's internal, intrinsic. Basically, that's I do this stat classification a lot of with all of the analysis, with all of the games that I analyzed. So basically, I was citing the case, or I went over both cases basically, that, for example, intrinsic system is one in which, for example, in Diablo 2, you get experience points and you spend those points on either strength, intelligence, or dexterity, depending on your class, if it's a barbarian, a warrior, mage, or rogue, and that increases the base attack damage of your character. A barbarian with more strength deals more damage. It's intrinsic, it's internal to the character, the framework of that stat system. You get the experience, you spend it on the attributes, and those increase the base attack damage, which is, in proportion, the stat that will help you survive the most, more than health or other stats in the case of the isometric action RPG genre. In the case of extrinsic systems, external systems, like Borderlands or Monster Hunter, loot basically determines your base attack damage. Your base attack damage and other secondary stats, but basically your base attack damage. So I was citing precisely Borderlands and Monster Hunter as examples of extrinsic systems. Why? And a lot of people over at YouTube, I mentioned this as the first talking point, could potentially think, watching this as a YouTube bot, that it's a silly topic. But it has a lot of influences. For example, I mentioned at the beginning, I explained with some other details, that basically extrinsic systems like Monster Hunter or Borderlands notice that there's an influence on the level design. Why? Because they will be much more grindy. than intrinsic systems. Diablo 2 is grindy. Think about Diablo 2 or Titan Quest. Anyone watching this as a YouTube bot as well. They are grindy. But if we compare them to Monster Hunter, to Borderlands, or some others that, or Destiny, for example, Destiny 1, Destiny 2, games that have clear extrinsic systems in which the base attack damage of your character is proportionately determined much more by the loot than the stats themselves, than the strength, intelligence, or dexterity of your character. If you think about it, Borderlands is much more grindy than Diablo 2. Hellgate London is a predecessor of Borderlands. It's much more grindy than Diablo 2. Destiny as well. While Diablo 2, if you want to do the highest difficulties, well, yes, you will have to farm a bit, but it doesn't come even close to Monster Hunter and Borderlands. Why? Because of the extrinsic stat system in that proportion. So it's a see that it determines the level design. It was my first talking point, Phantom. Just in case you just arrived, just so you have a bit of a context, because it's a quite abstract topic in that sense. You and anyone else watching, lurking, or whatever. In that sense, I have done this classification precisely because of that influence on the level design. It's much more grindy. To beat Cromarax the Invincible, I cited some minutes ago. In Borderlands 1, Cromarax the Invincible is the secret final boss. I recorded it over at YouTube, but it took me a lot of tries. Basically, it took me a lot of tries off stream because I needed a specific sniper rifle. In Diablo 2, you really don't have that. You don't need a specific weapon to clear even the highest difficulties. If you grind your stat system precisely enough, if you grind it enough, you will be able to beat it even on the highest difficulties. You will be able to do so. You won't need. I'm talking about unmodded versions of the game. Then if you do something crazy like Path of Exile or Median XL and go for a crazy difficulty, that's another story. There you are increasing the challenge on your own. But I mean the base game of Diablo 2, you really don't need a specific loot to beat that game, even on the highest difficulty. But think about Borderlands, as I've said. With Cromarax the Invincible, you need specific weapons to even have the chance to scratch and kill that boss. See the difference between an extrinsic system that depends on an external factor compared to your character, and another one that is intrinsic. The thing is that we generally don't rationalize all of these because people generally play the games, and we naturally, it's absolutely natural, we don't analyze them like that. But see how fascinating it is to get to the source of why the game is grindy in that sense, because at the end of the day it will affect the structure of the level design. In Borderlands, I had to farm for a specific sniper rifle and affected the structure of the level design because I had to backtrack in that sense. The same goes for Monster Hunter. Monster Hunter is the epitome of forcing the player to. I think it exaggerates it way too much. And let's dispatch the side quest, which is just making Grimag recover his memory. In that sense, there we go. There we go. We have that one ready. Let's go for the other one. There we go. I need to get to level 31, people, to get my Frost Nova. That way I'll be able to deal much more damage, Flying Energies told me. So, basically, I wanted to establish that classification between extrinsic and intrinsic stat systems. Extrinsic systems will give you a much harder time when progressing because of that structure that they have, because you will need a specific loot to increase the source of the main source of your base attack damage in that sense. So it's a quite fascinating phenomenon that I think we don't pay enough attention to nowadays, sadly, or the game reviewers, the professional so-called gaming press reviewers don't pay attention to that in that sense. All right, check if Teagan's sword is still in the weapon chest. Okay, we're looks like we're done. Then let's go back to Mr. Grimag in that sense. I want to see if he recovers his memory. I want to know who he is. He has the name of a server, after all, people. If you have the name of a server, you must be important. In that sense. In Star Wars: Your Republic, I remember that there are some names that there are some names that constantly that were absolutely unimportant, like Cath Hound, which is just an NPC for the name of the server. That's why I mentioned that. Knowledge is power. Thou hast wrestled. I think they lacked an L there. Could it be? My memory from the Nefertari pendants. Never have I trusted this woman. Now I recall, we sealed the underworld, and I was wounded in Teaganswall. Shortly before I passed, Agathon honored me by preserving all of my worldly knowledge. There is a place called Grimagstone, where my bones... Oh, level 29, nice. Where my bones were taken by a cultist? Perhaps this is when my memory was taken as well. Please bring my memory to a voice of the circle to guard it from being misused. Okay, people. Basically, I wanted to mention... Alright, okay. We've already analyzed the influence on the level design of the stat systems. So I wanted to get to the next talking point. Precisely. Let me check the other one that we need. We need to complete one more. This one. We can teleport there. Perfect. We can teleport there. The next talking point. Besides the influence of the level design of the extrinsic and intrinsic stat systems, what does it change? What does it change besides? Okay, because anyone watching this as a YouTube bot could say, well, it makes it more grindy, but what else does it affect in that sense? That you have a game in which the base attack damage is increased either by the stats of the character, through strength, through the attributes that then affect the stats, or the loot. What does it change at the end of the day? Okay, we'll get into that second talking point right now. Now, Teagan's Legacy. Of course you do. Then it is as I feared. This is terrible. The sword is required to carry out our yearly Dragon Knight ritual when we renew our oaths. We have been negligent in our duties and have failed. I heard that a smith working for the Nefertari plundered our armory and proceeded to melt down anything metallic. Teagan's sword is in danger of being desecrated or entirely destroyed. Kill the smith and save the world. Okay, that looks like the main quest, so we'll do the other one first. This one. Bring Grimag's memories to Roshan Shamoon in the Resistance Command Center. Okay, I have to turn this one in. Perfect. We are killing two birds with one stone. Anatomy of the enemy. We must retrieve the knowledge of our people once had of this old enemy and his minions. The wings which you have brought me definitely stem from something draconic, but a beast this ugly is undoubtedly the result of magic, not nature. These dragon-brood wings are too deformed and too weak to carry them through the air. There is a word of another type of smaller dragon that has been causing chaos across the land. Bring me their wings instead. Okay, perfect. We've got those two. We'll do those until... we'll do the main quests until we are... Fascinating. What I would not give to speak to Grimag myself, sorry. We now know how the Nefertari cultists were able to break the seal. With Grimag's knowledge, he's honored to be the guardian of his memory. Alright, perfect. And we are done with that one, right? The other one was another one. Okay, got it. Perfect. Then we go to this one. Perfect. Reclaim the sword, blah blah blah. Okay, good. We have to reclaim the sword of the god to protect humanity against the attack of the internet. Okay, people, let's get to the next talking point. As I was mentioning, it affects the level design. Okay, Razor. Some games are a bit more grindy, and others are not that grindy, depending on that stat system that you are mentioning. The extrinsic systems, like Destiny, Borderlands, or Monster Hunter, are more grindy. That's it. Okay. And you could think, well, but how does it affect the structure? Well, it fundamentally changes, and this is the main talking point, and precisely what I wanted to get to. It fundamentally changes the philosophy of the game on a much deeper level. Why? Because the fact that the proportion between these two opposite poles, increasing your base attack damage through loot or through attributes, the proportion is what is going to determine, first of all, the efficiency of the whole progression system of the game. The whole progression system of the game. In that sense, if the player is going to progress through just getting experience, or if he has to search for specific loot required to progress through it. Now, this may sound trivial at first, but it's certainly not. As I said, it determines the whole structure of the game. Let's forget about the level design for a minute, as I've already mentioned that. Think about the progression. If you need to get a specific weapon to progress through a game, like in Borderlands at the end with Cromarax the Invincible, because if you don't have a specific sniper rifle or whatever, a quite good weapon, you cannot beat the boss because you cannot beat it. The same goes for Destiny. That can frustrate the player altogether, because the player will need a much higher psychological determination, let's say, will need to be much more consistent to make it through the game, to surpass that challenge. Extrinsic systems that require specific loot require a much higher psychological determination by the player. See how it even affects the experience on that psychological level, in that sense. While intrinsic systems, Diablo 2, the base experience, if you get enough experience and you get enough attributes, well, you will be able to beat the game even if you don't have the very best weapon in the game, in that sense. But in Borderlands, in Hellgate London, in Destiny, in Monster Hunter, in all Monster Hunter clones, for example, without specific weapons, you just won't be able to progress through them. And that will deter, it will frustrate a lot of players from even finishing the game. And that can affect the whole game itself, because you know that nowadays, as we were mentioning the other day, this time, yes, I remember correctly, precisely, with Patrick, precisely, we were talking about the attention spam of modern audiences in a lot of cases. For example, that older games had required a longer attention span by the player, basically. In that sense, they required a much higher and longer attention span. So developers, what's the problem with developers in this case? Here we get to the point of the money for the investors and the developers. If you increase the required attention span, you're increasing the risk of the player just losing interest and either not buy your game because he knows about it through a YouTube bot nowadays, through a YouTube gameplay, or directly playing it a bit and then forgetting about the game forever because he couldn't get that piece of loot precisely because of the extrinsic system we never rationalize, and pretty much I cannot get a loot. Let's forget about it. For example, for example, um, in this sense, it affects the conclusion. It affects the psychological reward punishment system of the game, the stat system in this case, if it's extrinsic or intrinsic. It will affect the psychological reward punishment system of the game. The economic portion of the gameplay mechanics that will indeed reward or punish the player depending on his performance, of course. And increase or decrease that attention span required to get the loot precisely. Okay, the investors of all of these companies, of course, nowadays like all of these games to require the lowest possible attention span ever to not lose any sales. But what's the problem with that? The problem with that is what we get nowadays. They lower the attention span, not requiring players to loot specific items to progress through the game, and that causes another problem, which is that players nowadays, in a lot of cases, beat the games way too fast. They beat the games way too fast, and after beating them, they get bored with them. Because the endgame is not tied to an extrinsic system in that sense, after the main story was finished. See that it also has a risk. The problem is that by that time, the person has already paid the money for the game, and the investor won't have any problem in that sense. The ones that will have the problem will be the developers, because the game will have no end game, and the community will then complain about that afterwards. It happened to a lot of isometric action RPG games in the last years, in that sense. So it's not that it has no consequence, destroying the end game because investors forced you to not apply a proportion of that extrinsic system that is so addictive. What's the perfect solution, people? Let's get to the third talking point. Because we've already laid the two opposite sides, the two opposite poles of the spectrum. An intrinsic system, an intrinsic stat system, and an extrinsic stat system. Now that we've laid the two opposite poles, games in which increasing the base attack damage is dependent on loot, mostly, or games in which your base attack damage is increased through either of the three primary attributes, which are strength, intelligence, or precisely dexterity for the rogue in most isometric action RPG games. We have both systems, intrinsic and extrinsic. Okay, which is the ideal case? Which is the ideal case? The perfect system, the best possible situation that could ever happen, people. The best possible situation. Well, a proportion of both systems, but correctly implemented. I would cite as a near perfect system precisely that of Borderlands 1, at least. why, and that's why I wanted this to be the third talking point of today. The ideal solution. You need a proportion of intrinsic and extrinsic systems that complement each other. For example, in Borderlands 1, main difficulty, the normal difficulty of the game, you can beat it without depending on looting a specific sniper rifle, as I've said. Well, in my case I use a sniper, but the same goes for the other classes. Without using a specific sniper rifle. Or the case of Destiny, you can beat the main portion of the game with a proportionately more internal system, just with getting experience, moderately farming, nothing crazy, and you don't need a specific weapon to beat the main story boss of the game or whatever. Basically, the main, uh, the main. All right, we have to go back. The main, um, the main idea that the game proposes to you, beating the main story. You honestly don't need to farm a specific gear to beat Diablo 2. But then afterwards, for the end game, for example, modded versions of Diablo 2 precisely do this, or even Path of Exile, you will need specific items to beat the most difficult bosses. That's the perfect system in which there's a balanced proportion of the internal, of the intrinsic and extrinsic systems. In that sense, most games actually do, as a fourth talking point, this combination, but the proportion is the key. The proportion is the key. What's the proportion of extrinsic systems that you will implement, and what's the proportion of internal systems that the developer will implement and propose to us as players, for example? The perfect proportion is that in which you take advantage of the intrinsic system to make the game easy to play, and then the use the external system of looting that specific sniper rifle or whatever important weapon to make it hard to master afterwards. It's the formula that has made precisely Blizzard games so successful throughout the years, making the initial portion of the gameplay mechanics in terms of the reward punishment system normal, and then slowly scale it. The problem is that a lot of games then scale it abruptly, or I don't know, or they just don't have endgame straight up. That's the worst possible scenario, honestly. That's the worst possible scenario. That then they have no endgame or whatever. So there needs to be a proportion, and the degree of efficiency in that proportion is what will determine the proficiency of the developers, of also, besides their talent that needs to be there, ignoring the investors or investors not existing straight up, not being part of the game because it's a double A or whatever, or an indie, and ignoring that, let's say, initial grid that may affect, in that sense, the 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 proportion of the gameplay mechanics that would be the end game. Okay, so there needs to be a proportion, and it needs to be the perfect scenario, easy to learn, and then hard to master, with a bit of farming involved to cause that feeling of reward, of enhancing the reward punishments, the psychological effects of the reward punishment system on the in the player's mind. Basically, that's the idea. Teagan's legacy. One day, They shall sing praises of your glory. Thanks to you, not all is lost. Once we capture the fortress, I'll reinstate the oath ritual. The sword gives the dragon knights hope for a future in which our honor is restored. Okay, basically we are done with that. Okay, we'll then clear these ones that I got left from last time and proceed to the next chapter then afterwards. Okay, I don't know the locations where I have to go. The blunder trolls, but it doesn't say where. Could it be? Could it be where? Which area? Well, whatever. We just follow the trail. It doesn't say the area in some of the side quests. Okay. So see how interesting it is. See how many things it ended up affecting the extrinsic and intrinsic system. Okay. So the next challenge will be to determine the proportion of these two stat systems that Drakensang uses. What increases the base attack damage in that sense? So we need to pay attention to that. Of course, I will closely look at what increases the base attack damage in this game. Then otherwise, I will ask District and Flying Energies to help me if I cannot spot it. But the idea is that I need to see what increases the base attack damage of the game of your character. When you gain a level, does that increase the base attack damage? Or is it exclusively the loot? That is the key we will pay attention to today, after laying out all of the topics, pretty much all of the topics. Anyone that... Hang on a second. It's those trolls. Okay. No problem. There we go. Now we do this. So anyways, if anyone arrives late to the stat system dissection that we did in this hour and a half, then no worries, people at all. No worries, people at all. We'll go over it again. But basically, that's the idea. We need to determine what is the proportion that Drakensang Online uses. That's basically the idea. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Hey, what's that ability? Guardian? Summon a magical guardian that will fire at your enemies. What? And how do I do that? Where's the guardian? Hang on, I want my own personal guardian. Wait. There it is. How much does it last? Does it stay here? Only 10 seconds, goddammit. Is there a way to extend the duration of this guy? Guardian of Flame. This one. Guardian. But then we have a Flame Guardian there. No, but it's better to split the damage. And the duration, does it increase the duration? Lasts for 20 seconds. I have 8 points. Okay, I can Oh well, but then Flying Energies told me about the Frost Nova first. What was it? This one? Ah, okay. Let me get this one more or less here. That'll do. I like using that more MOBA style. Sorry, it's just that I played a lot of Heroes of the Storm people in that sense. That thing looks good. Uh-huh. It does say splendid. Hey, look at that. Looking good. Look at that, people. Look at that. Would you look at that? Can I apply the crystals once and for all? Speed weapon on this. Oh, yeah. Can I apply some of the crystals? So I get, yes. Block value. Yeah, I don't know that works fine. Well, I'll just apply it just in case. To free up inventory space. It's a secondary usage in that sense. Let me swap this one for this one. Okay, perfect. It's better to do that, to swap them, kind of like that. 70, this one 82. Good. The Magician's Orb, though, grants you is okay. It grants you health points, though. It's much better. I need to remember one of those. Eliminate that. Hey, we've got another one here. That block value and resistances must be quite interesting. Can we apply that one? Speed on this item. I wonder if this actually affects the weapon. If I do it like this. Guess I need to try. We'll use it on this belt. That is not that important to begin experimenting in that sense. Let's see. We'll try this too, so I can feel the difference. Because it says on this item. It says on this item. That's what makes me guild invitation. Aurora invited you to the Legend Guild. Would you like to join? I don't know who Aurora is or anything like this. In that sense. I don't know who you. If it's any of you guys, tell me. Damn it, I was Aurora. What are you doing in Razor? You're stupid. Okay, if that's the case, you tell me. But I don't recognize the name. Okay. Troll Canyon. Okay, people. As I was mentioning, we have to analyze which out of the two systems Drakensang Online uses. Which out of the two systems of the stat systems Drakensang Online uses. Pretty much, we need to determine what increases attack damage. If it's exclusively loot or the attributes that I have been mentioning as part of an internal stat system. Okay, where's the next quest? As we progress, we got them right. Let's get to this one. No, this one is there. This one was almost. Ah, it's Resistance Command Center. Let's go back then. So we need to determine which the proportion of the extrinsic and intrinsic stat systems that Drakensang Online uses. We'll do so between today and the next stream, next Tuesday, precisely now that we've laid out the theory of the proportion of the systems, of the stat systems that classics of the genre have used throughout the years. Namely, what you need to remember. Well done. We are making fortifying our position. Blah blah blah. Okay. Okay, we have a second part of this quest. We can take 4 storm timber for no más. Okay, let's get to this one. Let's farm a bit, and then let's do some of these side quests, and then we proceed with the main quest again. We go back to the main quest. But basically, the conclusion I would like you to take from today, if you're watching this as a YouTube bot, people, is that, as I've said some minutes ago, after laying out what an extrinsic stat system and intrinsic stat system is, the best proportion that has made, for example, Blizzard games so successful is precisely starting with an intrinsic system, in which the player can get to the end game, without relying on a specific piece of loot, of gear, to progress through it, but then making the game hard to master. Easy to play, hard to master, has proven to be the most effective degree of combination of the intrinsic and extrinsic stat systems of isometric action RPG games. As I've said, you start with an intrinsic system in which, through experience, you increase your 3 main attributes. There we go. We got the 4 timbers that we need there. You start increasing the... no, I can teleport, right? Yeah, I can teleport. Pretty much. There we go. So we do it faster. You start with an intrinsic system, an intrinsic stat system in which, like in Diablo 2, you get through the game, you get experience, you spend it on attribute points, and as a consequence of those attribute points increasing, namely strength, dexterity, or intelligence, depending on the class, perfect building material, we shall play the palaces. Okay, she's reinforcing our defenses. It's a recurrent quest. We can then ignore it. It's a daily. Okay, so we get rid of this one. Let's get to Anatomy of the Enemy. I have 8 out of 12. Why did I leave that quest unfinished like that? Let's finish it. So basically, that's the idea. People. That you need the game to start like that, and then with an intrinsic system, just getting experience and increasing your attributes, and pretty much because of that, you can get to the end game. Once you get to the end game, well, there is when the extrinsic stat system shines, because then in Borderlands 1, for example, you will then need to you know, to 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 beat a specific sniper rifle or whatever. Same goes for Destiny. To beat the most powerful bosses of the game. For example. Just as I feared, these wings have a deformity and hardly differ from the larger dragon's wings. This is definitely no coincidence. They are multiplied, and their children can only fly when they are small. Okay, what else do we need to do? We are clearing everything quite efficiently. Oh, okay. We're done then. It's just this guy. The last shot. Okay. Yo, but this is a this is a wait. I know it's not a daily. Okay, well, let's head over there. Defeat Big John and then Sister Tick. Okay, let's do those. Okay. Perfect. Okay, so what's the conclusion I want you to take from today? That that proportion, that you pay attention to the proportion of these two systems, because they will determine. Let's fight a bit. I'm getting sick of just running with these ones. Hey, I love that guy. That, that... Hey, that one's Big John. Ah, it's level 27. It has to be a bit of an older quest. Perfect. This one, Sister Tick. That should do it. If it's Sister Tick, guide me to it, please. I don't know what I would do without quest guidance. I would probably be consulting a map. I generally don't like it. I generally don't like the map on the interface like that. There it is. That should do it. Should be. Hey, look at that. I'm improving my damage now that I'm using my abilities. Who would have thought that using your abilities actually improve your damage? Yes, it does. It does. It does. It does. It does. It does. You did it. Very nice. Those trolls think they are the real deal, attacking travelers like they have been, but they are nothing more than a bunch of copycats. Okay, perfect. There we go. This quest. Give it to Jimmy the Guard. This quest is a curse. I cannot get rid of it no matter what. Then I will ask for help with this shit. To get rid of this damn quest that doesn't get away from it. That doesn't that I cannot get away from it. And it's constantly bothering. Okay. I think here I think we're done, huh? I know here's the main story quest. Here we go. Here we go. Let's Alright, we have 2 main quests and 3 side quests. That's okay. We are done with this zone of the game, I guess. I guess we are done with this zone of the game. And so we'll move on to the next zone, the next farming zone, people. Huh? Let's go for that. Okay. Let me. There we go. Mm-hmm. Burdens of the past, resistant commands, etc. Then we need to try these events if we have a bit of time by the end of the stream. We can check out those because otherwise I want to see how they how how they work. But yes, pretty much as a conclusion for today's topic of analysis, um, the proportion of intrinsic and extrinsic stat systems does matter, and as you could see, people, in my 5 talking points, I, I could show you that the stat system affects a lot of aspects of the gameplay mechanics and the level design that any isometric action RPG has to offer in that sense. So, pretty much. Now we need to look at the specific case of Drakensang Online between today and next Tuesday and the next stream. Basically, that's the case. We need to see if the base attack damage is increased through the intrinsic system or the extrinsic system, and the proportion of efficiency that Drakensang Online proposes to us, basically. We'll move that one over there. We'll move this one over here in the reserve. Here I think it's not used. So let's go with the main quest, Burdens of the Past. Kales, the second boss, remember that we fought in the second stream, in the second boss that we played 2 streams ago. Kale's strange powers showed me our enemy's arrival. Strange, powerful, numerous, and invincible, emerging from a broken circle of pillars. Could that be the sanctum beneath Teaganswall, I wonder? Ask Alexander Campbell for permission to seek the truth within it. Okay, so we have Burdens of the Past, that one. But then we have this one, which should be part of the main quest, correct? Long ago, my father, the king, remember the one we did quests for in over at King's Hill at the beginning of the series, to some 3 streams ago, struck a peace accord with Jarl the Norseman. A Norseman awaits our succor on the coast. Aid him at once. Okay, perfect. We got the main. There we go. There we go. The third act of chapter 1. And I'll grab the side quests. Some say the word with the end of the mind. Seal the egg from the brood guardian. I bring some of these just in case I need some experience. There is food supplies. Blah, blah, blah. Retrieve the supplies you can. And the prince sword in fortress Teaganswall. Was the purpose farmer for his name pile of ashes. Help me spare the king's from the same fate. Take this alchemical powder that Roshan Shamoon made and use it to destroy the enemy's stockpile of metal over at that zone. Okay, perfect, people. Perfect. Let me let me get to all of those. Let me get to all of those. There we go. So we have those side quests. In a ring, ferry, blah 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 blah. Well, first we'll move to the next zone. There be dragons. This was the quest that we were doing, so we start with this one, Hidden Sanctum. Let's go. I want to move the main base area. Ah, it's this one. Ask for permission to enter the Hidden Sanctum. A circle of pillars? Prince Aldred thinks the enemy is coming out of our sanctum's ceremonial hall. Well, then you certainly have my permission to investigate. We only enter it once a year, you see, to renew our vows, as is required of all true anointed dragon knights. Okay, and then we got this one. An old shield, blah blah. Okay, we get some. It's in the brood in the caverns. Okay, and we get more side quests over there. yeah, okay. They are not timed though in this game, the side quests, so yeah. You once again to Prince already no resistance. Okay, I have to go back and speak to him again. Have you spoken with him? I think the good man is unaware of precisely what his dragon knights have been defending so staunchly for all these centuries. A passageway between this realm and the underworld, an underworld, which the demons have been using to infiltrate our world. Burdens of the past. We are all as blind men when we seek truth, but it is our duty ever to chase after it. Discover all that you can about the cultists' activities in the Dragon Knight's hidden sanctum and inform Roshan of everything you learn. Okay. I peered into the Nimbus mirror, I saw track it down. Okay. Okay, we have to talk about the other one about the prince's vision. There we go. When you have Prince Aldred is obsessed about his vision of this monster. He's calling the beast the Herald of the Underworld. If it's as powerful as he says, then it's quite astonishing that it hasn't been spotted yet. But I think I have an idea as to where it could be hiding. Buried under Teaganswall in the hidden sanctum lies a bridge to the underworld, where you shall find a seal which keeps the two worlds separated. Examine it carefully, but make sure not to enter the ceremonial hall. Report back to me afterwards. Okay. We got those two. District, hey! How you do with the skills, the skill tree? What do you think about it? Precisely. It was what I was analyzing. District, I have a question. I have a question. You may help me with it. The base attack damage, specifically, because today I'm analyzing the stat system. Is it because is it increased exclusively through the loot that I see that it increases the damage, for example, there, or is there some kind of attribute system like increasing your strength, your intelligence, your I don't know, increasing attributes, for example? It's a topic that I was analyzing today. Do you happen to know how if you can increase the base attack damage through attributes? Are there attributes? Because I honestly don't see it. Like when you get a level, the damage comes from items, gems, jewel rooms, and wisdom tree. Okay, that you call the wisdom tree. What is it here that is locked until level 30? It increases attributes. Is there the concept of attributes in this game? I'm trying to dissect the stat system in that sense. I know that it's like a talent tree that increase attributes. Yes, perfect. Perfect. So I'm at level 29. So by the end of the stream, I'll be able to analyze that portion, even if I cannot see it completely. With the skill tree, Flying Energies helped me in the other stream. He made me, he recommended me with the fireballs here. That is the most important. That is the most important wisdom tree. Okay, so there are attributes. It's just that I cannot see them yet. Okay, but the game does have an attribute system. Perfect. Okay. Maximum is level 300 wisdom tree. Okay, perfect. So it does feature an intrinsic system, people. We can confirm it. So the wisdom tree that is unlocked at level 30, we cannot see it yet, but we will be able to do so in some minutes. It does increase the attributes. Is the purple bar you see right next to the level experience. Okay, so this bar affects the attribute system of the game that is unlocked at level 30. Okay, okay. So yes, okay. So we can confirm. First of all, the predominance and one more question, District. Sorry that I bother you with the is the proportion like does it increase the attributes exaggerately, especially the base attack damage? Does it increase it exaggerately, like modified by percentages, like Diablo 3, for example, like increase base attack damage by 20%? I don't know, like increase base attack damage by 20%, by 50%, by 100%, by 300%. Yes, it increases a lot. You can see the difference. Okay, perfect. Those were the 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 points that I needed. Thank you a lot, District. By the way, always. Um, okay, so we can confirm, people. Today, District, you can then watch the first part as a bot, just in case that you missed it. But otherwise I can do a recap for you. I basically classify stat systems in intrinsic and extrinsic. Basically, just so you have a bit of a context of what I do. Intrinsic one, extrinsic, sorry, extrinsic stat systems are those that precisely depend on loot. Extrinsic is basically that uh, that there's an element which is external to the existence. Also, repeatable quests in this game are useless. Yes, I'm trying to ignore them. Gives no experience or anything. Okay, the ones that have the symbol of kind of like a loading bar in them. Yes, I've seen them. These ones should not be, right? Or are they kind of like just disguised? Yeah, okay. The ones that have the symbol, the loading symbol. These ones are kind of like side quests, but not dailies in that sense. Do these ones give these ones do give experience, right? These ones do. Yeah, pretty much. They have. Yeah, 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 yes. Okay, thank you, District. Great. So basically, what I was mentioning, just so you have the more or less the framework of what I do, I classify stat systems. I mentioned 5 consequences and 5 talking points at the beginning and everything, but in 2 days, the event, in 2 days, the event, maybe there's an event. I saw that there was an event or something like that when I logged in. We have the biggest event in Drakensang. You can get the best set in the game. Sure, I can. Well, in 2 days would be Thursday. Well, I could. We could switch Star Wars: Your Republic, and you can get it as free to play. Okay, and I bet you know that will make the process of beating the main story and my analysis much easier. Okay, I get your point. Yeah, we can do it. We can play it on, but the game is for endgame players. Ah, okay. So I cannot access it. No worries, District. No worries. Don't you worry about it. I'll find a way to get through the game. Otherwise, then yeah, you can. No, don't worry. Don't worry. Don't worry. I see the. Don't worry. I'll find my way to do it. If I've had to farm a bit, it's not a problem. I'm used to these games. What I was mentioning is precisely at the beginning, but it's good to mention it in the analysis. Okay, you want they provide the best gear in the game that is tied to the. So you are mentioning me the best set. Now I get your point. The best set. Oh, that means the extrinsic portion of the stat system precisely. That's why it was yes best set in the game. Okay, so the extrinsic portion of the stat system for every class, the best set for every class. Okay, yeah, it's the cape that I think it was Patrick mentioned it the other day. I think he mentioned it the other day that you need the a cape that basically allows you to farm much faster and everything. Something like the cape, something like that. I don't remember if it was Patrick or Ambra that mentioned it. Yeah. Okay, but yes, it's the winter cape. Okay, okay. Well, we're in the winter. I was mentioning at the beginning, District, here in the southern hemisphere, precisely. We're in the winter. Okay, so it's the cape that he had mentioned. Okay, okay. Right. I was mentioning about the stat system. I get your point. You want me to mention it because it's precisely part of the extrinsic part of the stat system. That you depend on that loot. You depend on that loot to progress then, right? On that winter cape. You depend on that loot. Like, it's extrinsic, precisely what I was talking about today. See the coincidence? I was mentioning that there are